Okay, we have some audience. Okay, hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to Holistic Kung Fu. Teriyaki Tuesday. We just finished a teriyaki, which was splendid today. Quite good.
Holistic.
Yeah, Holistic Kung Fu. So we're going to talk today, we're going to be talking today about breathing, the importance of breathing, what that means, and how it is important for our situation we're in right now, especially how things are, just in general. I mean, breathing's pretty important. If you stop breathing, then you're going to stop living. So pretty important stuff. But why don't Miss Gibbons get started on that, and then we'll go from there.
Okay,
so where do you want to start?
Well, let's just talk about, we're talking about the breath. So how does the breath come into play here with Kung Fu?
With Kung Fu. Well, Kung Fu,
How does it affect things?
Well, it affects everything. So let's go back to the original purpose of Kung Fu, which not the core purpose, but why Kung Fu evolved, why it started, was out of self-defense, out of combat, right? And it became a system of self-cultivation and a system of development, well-being, as well as a system of self-defense, right?
Is that the order?
The
order that it started in.
Well, it started. The order of it is arguable. What if you look at? There's a lot of different ways to look at it, to go through the history. And for what I've come to understand is that, I mean, you could look at martial art as starting, people would say, well, martial art started in Kung Fu, and Kung Fu started in China. So that's the origin of all martial art. Well, it really depends on your definition, right? I mean, if you think about it, martial arts started the day when, one caveman took a spear, which was normally used for hunting, and decided to throw it at another person, right? So he took a tool for hunting and used it not for its intended purpose.
Okay, so martial arts started the first time a human attacked another human.
Right.
But Kung Fu is a whole different thing, right?
Well, Kung Fu being the art of self-cultivation, I would argue that Kung Fu started with, Confucius, who was teaching archery as a skill, like to be a scholar, one would have to learn archery, right? And he was teaching it not just to hunters, he was teaching it to everyone, because it was a skill. It's like, if you can sharpen this skill, of archery, even though it's a skill for hunting and warfare, you can use this as a system of self-cultivation, right? Overcoming your own struggles and sharpening your own senses and things like that. Now, at the time, he got pushback because he was teaching archery as a skill, and he would teach people who weren't typically hunters. So they wouldn't be able to, with their bow, they wouldn't be able to pierce leather, right? And the argument was like, well, this is stupid. Why are you teaching them that they can't even pierce leather? If they can't even pierce leather, who cares how accurate they are? They're not going to be an effective hunter. And you say, well, it's not about that. It's about every shot you take, you're overcoming a little bit more of yourself. And that's a balance that we see now. You see martial arts, people do Tai Chi, and you'll see someone be like, well, that wouldn't work in a fight, right? It's the same argument. Like, that crap already started thousands of years ago, right? And the point was, well, okay, maybe, but that's not the point. You're using this now. We're more refined now. We don't need to be hunting. We don't need to be clubbing each other. Now you're using this as a skill of self-cultivation, right? So the same thing with martial art. Obviously, you want to keep it, you want to be able to defend yourself. But solely that self-defense is not the point. It's an art form, right? And if it was only about being able to defend yourself, well, then we wouldn't have to do all the techniques and everything. We'll learn that we don't have to do any of that stuff. We just got to throw each other in a ring with another person and just beat the pulp out of them, right? And then if you do that repeatedly, then you're going to be a better defend yourself. It's not going to make you a good martial artist. It's going to make you someone that just really understands violence, right? And they're numb to violence, and that gives them the advantage on a combative level. So it depends on where you're looking at it. But from my point of view, the way we teach you, we're more like looking like that, like the way Confucius was teaching archery. It's a skill that you're learning, to put time into something to start understanding yourself. All right. So that's, in my opinion, that's where Kung Fu started at that point. Now, if you're at a point where you're cultivating an art, you don't want to be all tensed up and huffed up and ready to go, right? So the breathing comes into play there. If you're going to keep calm and you're going to be drawing an arrow back and focusing on it and trying to get that accuracy, the breathing is very important. And if you're like in a fight or flight state, you're like, oh, let's go, you're not going to be able to shoot with the same level of refinement than you otherwise would. Okay, if that makes sense.
So the breathing is about controlling the
Yes,
the
controlling your
mind,
state.
and body. Just leave it. That's
Okay.
yeah. So okay, so why? How does that work? How does your breath? How does controlling your breath affect the state of your body?
Okay, so well, we say in holistic kung fu that the mind follows the body and the body follows the mind, right? Mind follows the body, body follows the mind. So if I sit here and I'm thinking, you know, not very positive things. If I'm thinking of all the garbage that's going on right now, that's really upsetting, and all the unfortunate things are happening, and all the arguing that's happening, and all the fighting that's happening, and you know, and all the fear that's going around. Now you notice what's happening to my body now as I'm thinking about all this stuff. Okay, how my body position has changed a little bit. Okay, if you're not, you can watch it and you can see in the camera. Okay, now if this continues on, the body language is going to change. So that's an example of how your mindset controls the body. Okay, and now if you're in this negative state all the time, it's going to affect you in a very big way, right? It's going to change, you know, how your body moves and how it's not going to be in a good state of health because it doesn't have a good state of mind, because it's just like it's a low energy, you know, in a low energy position. So that's an example of how the mind follows the body. Okay, now likewise, if I'm in that state of mind, but now I push myself to sit up straight, right, be a little more attentive and smile and look around a little more optimistically, even if it's like a little bit, I'm pushing it a little bit, when I keep in this position and change my body language, my thought process is going to start to fall to that, right? So that's an example of the body following the mind and the mind following the body. In this case, the mind is following the body, okay? Now, it's hard to start that cycle. If you're really, really tense, right, it's hard to just be calm. Be calm. Ugh. It's not really working. Like, it might look like I'm trying to be calm. You can't try to be calm. You just be calm, right? Like, the more you try to do it, you're not going to do it. It's not something that you chase after. It's something that you allow, right? If your mind is scrambling all over the place, it's going to be really hard to make those body adjustments. And if your body's really tense, it's going to be hard to make those mind adjustments. Where the breathing comes in, is the breathing is the only thing that's really in your control, and that's what starts that cycle. Okay, so if you want to start in a more positive cycle, it starts with your breath, and then when you breathe a little softer, a little more full and deeper, your mindset's going to be a little more calm. And when your mindset's a little more calm, your body reflects that calmness. So when your body starts to reflect that calmness, then your mind's more calm, which is going to relax the body, which is going to relax the mind. So some people can't get a hold of that degree of control, for lack of a better word, right? And the breathing, if you control the breathing, that will lead to more control over your body. Control's not really the best word, but for lack of a better word, that's a word we'll use for now.
You could maybe say like a discipline or skill, because I think it is a skill.
More discipline, yeah, discipline. In our sense of the word discipline, not discipline like, yeah, not like crack the whip discipline. Discipline is in guiding, right?
Yeah.
And then using, you know, conditioning your behavior through reinforcement, right?
And I remember one time I was having a hard time understanding that, and you described it as a spiral rather than a circle.
Exactly. It's a spiral up or it's a spiral down. So, for example, if you put yourself in this body position here, right?
Yeah, it just looks like you're making fun of me.
Oh, no. But if you put yourself in this like negative body position here,
Yeah.
okay, and then your body position is gonna change your mentality, which is gonna reinforce the body position, which is gonna reinforce the mentality, okay, and then it's also gonna restrict your breathing. When your breathing is restricted, your mind function is restricted. You don't have as much blood going to your brain, so your brain's not gonna be as active. So that's a spiral downward. Now, if you change your body position a little bit, it's gonna help your mindset a little bit. That's gonna help you breathe more calm, so then you're gonna be more, you have better brain power happening, right? Better brain activity, and then you're gonna spiral up. So yeah, that's a very good point. It's a spiral. One way or
So
the
it's a
other.
Fibonacci sequence?
It's a Fibonacci. Yes, it's a Fibonacci.
Okay, good.
If
Alright.
Bob Moses watches this, he's gonna like that.
Yeah.
I hope he sees it.
Okay, good. Alright, so when are some times when it's useful to use your breathing? Well, let's talk about breathing exercises.
Okay, so your basic breathing exercise is your diaphragmatic breathing, okay?
Yeah.
And it's not there are many breathing exercises that are not this way. So this is not like the ultimate, right? But this is the best place to start, is your diaphragmatic breathing, where you're breathing, we call it belly breathing because your belly is what's breathing most, right? But the easiest way to start it is put your hands on your belly like that. And just watch your shoulders. So look in the mirror, and when you take a breath in, if you're doing this, lifting your shoulders up, then your chest breathing, right? Which is the common way most people breathe, but it's not gonna help us get into a meditative or relaxed state,
Why
right?
do most people breathe like that?
Well, I guess because, I don't know, stress. The mind follows the body follows the mind. So when they start to think restricted in here, right? When you're a baby, everything's just easy, everything's relaxed, you go with the flow, you belly breathe. And then, the more we get used to this incarnation and I guess, more accustomed to it, and we get those stresses, because it's when you're in the fight or flight response, that's what happens. Your chest tightens up, right? You feel it here. So maybe it has something to do with that. I don't know. It's a good question. I've never given it too much thought.
I know, and when we took, in school, we had choir class, and they teach you diaphragmatic breathing,
Mm-hmm.
and they tell you not to be afraid to look fat.
Oh yeah, for posture too. So when you go to the beach, you want to show off your beach bod, then you suck in your stomach. So it could be vanity is a part of it. You think it's mostly vanity?
I don't know if it's mostly vanity, but I think that could be.
It's probably a contributing factor at some level.
I know
but-
in dance they make you not breathe in your stomach.
Yeah,
Well, certain
that
types
makes
of
sense
it,
because they want to get like that. And but if you want to be thinking clearly, then you got to breathe clearly. And the breathing clearly starts with your belly breath right down here. Oh, hold on. Is there a comment down here? I got to read if someone's actually. I meant to say that earlier. If you guys have any questions, feel free to chime in. Oh, it's Lacey. Lacey, hey.
She's breathing.
Lacey, are you still watching? If you're still watching, I meant to say
Sounded
this.
like Netflix there. Are you still?
Are you? If you're still watching and you want to ask a question, go on the Zoom. Go on Zoom, your regular class link, and because we have that pulled up, and you can chime in and you can ask questions directly on that, or any other comments or anything like that. It'd be cool. So
that's cool. We can have live.
we can. That's what I wanted to do. Yeah, so we can have live questions that are actually like
I think he's waiting for class.
on the video. Okay, well we'll just keep them waiting a little bit longer.
That's
So anyway, we want to breathe. That means that when you going back to the diaphragmatic breathing, when you're breathing in and you're pushing your hand, your belly is pushing your hands out. Your belly is inflating here, right? And when you breathe out, you flatten your belly back in. And the idea is to keep your breath nice and low and not have your shoulders come up, right? Which is hard for people at first, especially if they're not used to it and they don't have the elasticity around the belly. But the more you practice it, the more elasticity you develop around the belly. The more the belly expands, the more the diaphragm drops down and the more the lungs can inflate downward, because they can't really inflate outward, right? They have a sternum here which doesn't expand very well. So when you're breathing with the chest, basically your lungs are behind a cage, they can't get past. But when you breathe with your belly, the lungs are dropping down, finding more downward to expand to. So it'll help us, even though it's not comfortable at first, it'll help us develop a more full breath, right? Did I answer your question?
Yeah, so that's one breathing exercise. Are there any other types of breathing exercises that you would recommend doing, and when would you recommend doing them?
I would get that first. Like there are others, but I wouldn't recommend them unless you're doing as part of some other, either Qigong class or Kung Fu class or yoga class that you're doing where the instructor knows what they're doing. Otherwise, you gotta get too much blood moving to your head, or you're gonna knock yourself out or something. Or with certain types of reverse breathing, if you're not, you can hurt something in here too if you're not careful with it, right? But the diaphragm breathing is,
When would you recommend practicing?
all the time. Whenever you're at a red light, practice your breathing. Well, once you're aware of it, you'll find yourself, doing, just regular things, and you'll stop and ask yourself, like, when's the last time I took a breath? Because you realize how, like, I haven't been, you've been breathing, but not like, you've been having shallow little breaths here and there. You haven't taken a long, full breath. But anytime you're able to think about it, you want to transfer your intention down here in your belly, breathing in, expanding your belly, and then relaxing it, okay? And the more often you do that, the more you get into the habit of it. And then once it's a habit, you're breathing all the time. And that's your goal, is to be breathing like, rather than trying to do fancy extra breathing techniques, just get to the point where your diaphragm is breathing all the time, right? And when you do that, it'll feel like, it feels awkward now to breathe it with the chest, like it's limited, right? Once you're used to the diaphragm breathing, that's what you want to be so used to it that a high breath feels like you can't get enough air, right? But it takes time. But once you have it automatic, then you've engaged a lot of like longevity systems to work for you all the time, right? Because diaphragm breathing is going to help your circulation. It's going to help your lymphatic system clean out, old dead cells out of your body and keep everything nice and fresh and avoid stagnation. So it's always working for you once you have it. So it's very important for health.
So when you're in proper breathing, you get a proper state of mind for a resting state?
Yes. Yeah, when you're doing that breathing, it will lower your heart rate down.
Okay. And then so we talk about the opposite of that is like the fight or flight response, which can happen in combat, but also is just a part of daily life now.
So the fight or flight response happens when you're in danger and your body perceives stress, some kind of threat, right? It fires into fight or flight response, and and you dumps energy into your body, so you get very, very tense, right? Mm-hmm. And there's advantage to that when adrenaline. When adrenaline hits, it can be in a lot of ways. I'm going to read this out. This is a good point. Okay, like says, when the sympathetic nervous system is active by stress, the accessory muscles of breathing in neck and chest activate to help you run away from fight or flight threat. Our body responds to work stress the same as a threat to life. Yeah. So very good point. So, which is like, so this service a long time ago, right? When we needed that heightened response in our muscles to either fight or to run away, right? The advantage of that are you're faster, right? You're stronger. You have better reflexes, right? Exactly.
Your body diverts
energy into fight or flight. Your body diverts all its resources into running away or fighting like hell, right? Now the problem is that's not a system that should be used long term, because if it's diverting all the energy into fighting or running away, it's not putting energy into proper breathing, thinking, digesting, filtering out toxins in the body. All those things that we need to have good longevity, good health long term, those are all shut down. Wouldn't really matter for those 20 seconds, because the most important thing at that time is we've got to survive that 20-second confrontation. The problem is now we have stress all the time. Even when you're on Facebook, right? Facebook's growing feed, and then someone posts an article you don't like, and they put a comment on your stuff that you don't like, and you're like, oh, and you get angry at that person, and you get in this you get all riled up. You're in this partial state of fight or flight. Well, every time that happens, it's the same thing. You're shutting down, right, the things that your body needs to keep long-term health. You're shutting those right down, and you're only working on fight or flight. Well, nothing is attacking you right now. You're on Facebook. You're on a stupid screen, right? So getting fired up about that is not the best thing for you, right? Now, and this year, it's like we're on it. We're on it all the time. So we're in a constant state of fight or flight, even a partial state of fight or flight, where the anxiety and the negative benefits are still there. We just don't realize it, because a lot of us now are just used to it. People are used to just being on edge all the time.
What are some of the negatives of being in that fight or flight? Like, we know the pros of the adrenaline dump.
Well, cortisol is harmful to the body, right? The stress hormone is harmful to the body. Mm-hmm. And it's
makes you gain weight.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it makes you gain weight, right? I think it affects your sleep. Does it affect your sleep? I think I remember reading that.
I think it affects everything.
It just makes everything crappy. Yeah, everything except it's really, really good at running away from a wolf when you need to. It's really good for that.
Yeah.
Right?
Saber-toothed tigers don't
have
a chance.
Exactly. Not too good for much else, right? Very good for self-defense if you learn how to control it, right? And that's the other thing. If you don't train enough martial art and you don't have things in a muscle memory and you haven't trained in the fight or flight response, when a confrontation happens, you're not going to know what to do because you haven't spent any time there, right? So you're just going to panic and you're going to freeze. Whereas if you learn to control the fight or flight response, which is what we work on in our NCAP program, right? Controlling that fight or flight response, you can learn to work within that fight or flight response, being cognizant of what's going on and not having complete tunnel vision and not freezing completely. So you can still get the strength and the speed of the fight or flight response without having like, you know, the complete being frozen and loss of all of your motor function.
I think NCAT is like the coolest experience that we train here.
It is a pretty cool
Because
thing.
it's literally like you're getting into a different state of mind and you're training, and it's amazing how fast it gets in your mind. I know that's the point of it, but you learn so much faster.
Yeah.
And so much of it sticks. And it's so cool because it's like a safe place to practice like a really dangerous thing, right?
Yeah.
When you have someone guiding you and you, but it's like so real at the same time. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and when I originally started learning weapons training, the master that taught me said that you learn a weapon so you can learn to defend against that weapon, right?
Yeah.
So, what happened there? One second. So it's like when you learn fight or flight, when you learn to work with adrenaline, it's the same thing. It's like it's a weapon, and once you experience it, then you also understand it and you know how to avoid it, right? So when you're in those, again, when you're on social media and someone upsets you by something they say, you understand, okay, now I'm in a little bit of a fight or flight response. I don't have to respond to it. I can step back and control my breath. Once I can control my breath, then I'm going to be thinking more clearly. I won't have to keep my body all tense. My body's not all tense. I'll be able to calm my mind down. And then it's
make an actual decision.
And make a proper decision. Backspace all the stupid comments that I was going to write in reply, right? I do that regularly. Wait, nope. Okay, think about it. Breathe. Okay, backspace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so breathing, a lot of times people associate with meditation.
Yes. Well, you have to. Like you can't meditate. I don't think you can really meditate
can't really do anything without breathing.
But if you're going to be in a calm state of mind, you have to control your breath. You can't, and that's why people don't like meditating, is because they don't know. Not they don't know how, but they think they can't. Because like I can't sit still for 30 seconds. I get all nuts. Well, it's not
that's
that.
why you need to sit still
That's
for
why.
30
Yeah,
seconds.
exactly. If you can't, it's like if you can't, you must. But if you can't sit still for 30 seconds, it's not like you got to force yourself to do something. It's not a doing something, it's a not doing something, right? So it's the same thing. If you can't sit still because your mind's active, well, then you have to think. You've got to take control of that, right? Or you have to just redirect that. And the way you do that is through focusing your breath. Once your breath calms down and becomes nice and deep and slow, right? Then your mind will follow. And then you think your mind's going crazy all the time. It's only doing that because you're letting it, because you're breathing up high and you're breathing shallow. Like that, right? Because you're in this constant state of fight or flight all the time. If you control your breath, you allow yourself to calm down, and then you can go into a more meditative state.
So, as far as meditation goes, meditation is a letting go process.
Let it go. Yeah, it's not a doing thing. It's a proactive thing, right? Instead of a reactive thing. So when we talk about strike first before, right? Strike first is a proactive principle, right? Mm-hmm. It's not, you're not stopping something, you're causing something else to happen. Mm-hmm. So when you meditate, you're not trying to blank out thoughts, because that's stopping something, right? And we have this problem right now in our society. Everything is anti. We've got to be anti this, we've got to be anti that. And we need to be working on is start being pro things instead of being anti. Because when you're trying to be anti everything, you're trying to control things. Things that can't be controlled, right? Instead, you want to think of yourself as creating or manifesting things and having discipline over what it is you're directing, but not controlling it, right? Mm-hmm. So you don't want to be like trying to blank out your mind being anti-thought, mm-hmm. right? You want to just be pro-emptiness or pro-at-peace. It's a little bit different, but little hinges swing big doors. Does that answer your question?
I think so.
Okay. Next question.
Next question. So what kind of...
Oh, so you're talking about meditation. You're asking me about
Breathing and meditation.
Breathing,
I think-
that was the next part though. You're asking about what no, I lost it. There's something else I want to add to that. I can't remember now. But not having, like, you don't need to sit there and think of just clearing your mind. You want to think of something creative instead. So I like the here and now meditation is a very, very simple meditation you can do, right? Because you're not focused on nothing. You're just trying to direct your thoughts in a certain way so they're not spazzing out all over the place. So the here and now meditation is just you're focusing first on your breath, the one thing you can control, right? You take a few deep breaths, and then if you've got your beads, then you just basically say that, every time you take a breath, you move one bead, right? Just as something to kind of keep you a little bit distracted. And as you breathe in, you just put yourself right in this space. You say to yourself, I'm right here. I'm in this space. And as you breathe out, you say, I'm right now in this moment, right? When you breathe in, I'm right here in this space. And you breathe out, I'm right now in this moment. It's the simplest meditation. And if you do you just do 10 of those breaths, then you'll feel better already because you'll have centered yourself and you're not all over the place. You're in the moment, right? That's when we have a lot of anxiety because we're not in the moment. We're either...
What does it feel like to be in the moment?
I don't know. It just feels
That's a
momenty.
Wow, this moment is so momenty.
Well, you're not... Okay, so when you're in the past, you're worried about things that already happened that you can't change, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you're in the future, you're worrying about all these things that haven't come up yet that you might have to deal with that probably aren't going to happen anyway, right? And a lot of times we have fear when we're thinking about the future, right? Fear. What's the acronym? Fear. False evidence appearing real, right? And a lot of the stuff we worry about doesn't really happen anyway. So you're basically putting your mindset on stuff that's not going to happen. That you're afraid of for really no reason, okay? So when people have anxiety, a lot of it's the worried about something they can't change, something that hasn't happened yet that they have no control over. So there's no control either way, right? So of course you're going to get anxiety. When you're in the moment, you don't have that because you're just focused on what is within your control, your breath and being in this space right now, right? Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's pretty much everything we had to go over.
All right. Well, anyone? Oh, another question here, or something.
I feel like that
Miss
meme.
Gibbons, you should do another mala bead workshop online. Ooh, online mala shop. Welcome to the mala shop.
When you're trying to read comments on a podcast.
Okay, mala shop. That sounds good. Well, thanks for watching. A little bit short today because we got classes to teach. Thanks for joining us, guys. And we're just trying to. The main thing is we wanted to do another podcast today because we don't want to
If
fall
you
out
have
of
any
that.
topic suggestions, drop them in the comments below.
Yeah, if you wanna hear anything else about holistic kung fu, please feel free to comment. And if you guys are current students, if you're watching the next one, it's gonna be on Zoom at the same time. So please click on the Zoom link and join us for our next podcast if you have the Zoom access code if you're a current student. Okay? Thanks for watching, and we'll see you later.